Right. So we are going to start with the very first part itself. First of all, they have told us about what is biology. So we need to understand the definition of biology, right? So this could, even though we think this is not that important, everything from beginning to the end of applied biology, which is the last unit, will be of utmost importance for your exam, right? All have an equal value. Sometimes people neglect these parts, right? So biology is a science, we know that, right? And it is a science focused on studying of living organisms, right? So the definition is easy for you. Write down SCQ over here. Could be asked for an SCQ. What is biology? It is a science which is focused on studying of living organisms, right? So what does bio stand for? Bio stands for life and logo stands for study of, right? So basically biology means what? Biology means the study of life, right? So let's just go through the R, B, and C. The concept of life is not easy to define. Still, scientists are unable to provide an acceptable definition for life, right? So they won't ever ask you what is life because even scientists haven't provided a definition for that, right? Life is something special and unique and which cannot be explained using laws of chemistry and physics. So we can't basically explain life using chemistry and physics, right? Okay. Biology is a subject which is very complex and vast. Okay. Hence, for the convenience of studying, now this is an important part. Biology has been divided into three main branches or three primary branches. What are those three primary branches? The first one is zoology, studying of animals, right? Zoology is the study of animals. And then comes botany. Botany is the study of plants. And then comes microbiology, study of microorganisms. If you can remember, in unit 2, you might have done by now about the two scientists who discovered that all plants were made out of cells, right? Who was the scientist that found out that all plants were made out of cells? It was Matthias Claydon, right? Matthias Claydon found out that all plants were made out of cells. He was a botanist, right? He was a botanist. So who was the one who found that all animal cells were made out of cells? All animals were made out of cells. Who was that scientist? It was Theodore Schwann, right? Theodore Schwann. So he was a zoologist, right? So basically, biology can be divided into three main branches. One is zoology, which is the study of animals. The other is botany, and the other is microbiology. When people ask when people ask what are the three primary branches, many people forget the microbiology part. Maybe it's because sometimes it's too simple to even understand, right? It's too simple to study because you know it's microbiology, but many people forget that, right? So try to keep these three things in your head. The three primary branches of biology are zoology, botany, and microbiology, right? So we can actually now, under all these topics, we have some study like areas which we can study, like units, like subtopics actually. For example, when it comes to study of animals, we can study the tissue of that animals, right? And then we can study the cells of that animal separately. Or else we can just study about the gross structure. That means like the body parts of that animal, right? Separately. Or else we can just study the functions of that animal. For example, we can just look into its heartbeat and see how its heart is functioning and all, right? So we can either look into that function or we can go deep into the cells and we can see how the molecules are functioning, right? And also we could see the DNA molecule structure of these animals as well. We can study that area as well, right? Or else we can just study how these animals live in a particular environment, right? So you can see under zoology how many study areas we've got, right? First of all, Some students might want to study the cells of that animal. Some students might just want to study the tissues of that animal. Some students might want to study the body parts of that animal. And some students might want to study the function of that animal. And while some students might want to look into the biological molecules in that animal, while some students might want to look into the DNA of that animal, like how those how those genetic material is being transferred from one generation to another. And some students might want to just see how they interact with the environment, right? Just likewise, when it comes to plants also, some students might be interested in studying the cells, while others might be interested in studying the tissues, while others might be interested in studying the parts of the flower. For example, if you take the parts of the if you take the parts of a plant, some students might be interested to study the flower area, or some students might be interested to study the leaf area, right? Just likewise, they might be interested in different fields, right? And also some students might be interested to see how photosynthesis takes place. Photosynthesis is like a function, a process taking place, right? Not a function. It's a process taking place, right? And what are the functions of plants? Usually they give out carbon, they give out oxygen to the nearby living organisms, right? So some students might want to go in depth to that area and study those things, right? While some students might want to study the genetics of that plant. So you can see in every field, in every primary branch of biology, you can study the same area, same field of studies, right? See, what is that? You can study the cells, right? It could be either the cells of animals, it could be either the cells of plants or the microorganisms. Microbiology means what? The study of microorganisms. So when it comes to cells, you can look into the cells of the animals, the cells of the plants, the cells of the microorganisms. So the first area of study under these branches are the cell biology. What do you mean by cell biology? Studying the cells, right? Okay, so there are scientists who specialized under cell biology, while there are scientists who could be specialized under these topics, right? Let's see the other topic, histology. Histology means what? Studying tissues. Now, what is tissues? A group of cells makes up a tissue, right? A group of cells makes up a tissue with a group of cells with a specific function makes up a tissue, right? So histology means studying the tissues, right? So there could be scientists who are interested in histology, studying the tissues. For example, if you take the doctors might look into the muscle tissues, right? The function, the muscle tissue structure and everything. So those people are interested in the histology of that particular organism, right? So histology means studying tissues. Anatomy, this is like the very first book that you have when you start medicine. If now you all will be future doctors, so one day you will touch these books, right? The anatomy books. Anatomy means studying the body parts, right? Anatomy means what? Studying the body parts. For example, it could be our upper limb, or it could be our lower limb. Upper limb means the hands, lower limb means the legs, right? The leg areas. So it could be basically studying the head area. So different parts of our studying different parts of our body is what you call as anatomy, and that is the very first book. That means that is the very first part in medicine that you are going to learn when you go to medical school, right? So anatomy means studying about the gross structure of the body, right? Anatomy means the gross structure, right? We are not going into details as in cell biology or histology. We're just looking at the gross structure. For example, anatomy means basically if you take, they can study the skin as well. When you're studying about the skin, we are basically learn what is under the skin layers, what are the layers, right? We are not going into the tissue concept or the cell concept, right? We're just learning the skin as an organ. That is it, right? Skin is the largest organ in our body. It's a fact, right? So I'm just saying some facts as well to make it interesting. Plus, it is in your resource book in the future. right? Okay, so anatomy means studying about the gross structure of the body. Then what do you mean by physiology? Now, what do you mean by physiotherapy? Now, physiotherapy means you are going to a particular, what you call, hospital or somewhere, and you're doing some exercises, right, to increase the functioning of your body, right, to increase the functioning of the organs in your body. That is, physiotherapy is actually a medical treatment, right? It's not something that you do for fun, right? It's a medical treatment for some diseases, right? So like physiotherapy means trying to do something to improve the functioning of your body. So physiology means studying the functions of our body, right? So some functions could be actually, now our intestines have a function of absorption, right? So some doctors might be interested in this absorption function of the small intestine. So physiology means studying that particular area, right? The functions of the small intestine. If you take the functions of the liver has several functions. One such function is to produce heat in our body. Liver produces heat in our body, right? So we can study, when we are studying these functions in our body, that study of functions is called as physiology, right? Physiology. And studying biological molecules, for example, let's say you're a person, you're a scientist who's interested in studying about enzymes, or studying about hormones, or studying about neurotransmitters, right? These are all what? Biological molecules. Molecules which is inside our body. Molecules which is present inside our body. So studying about these enzymes, how these enzymes work in our body, or else it could sometimes be what you call learning about viruses, pathogens, right? Pathogens. These are also biological molecules, and that is also a study under microbiology, because viruses are microorganisms, right? So actually studying about these molecules like enzymes, hormones, neurotransmitters, that is basically what you call as biochemistry, because chemistry involves the term molecules, right? In chemistry, what do you usually learn? In chemistry, you usually deal with molecules, right? Even in organic chemistry, even in inorganic chemistry, all what you've got to deal is with molecules, right? Molecules and equations, right? So biochemistry means studying about biological molecules, right? What is biochemistry? Studying about biological molecules. Then next is the genetics. What do you mean by genetics? Genetics means something to do with the genes in our cells, right? All of our genes will have DNA in it, right? All our genes will have DNA in it. So that means, why is there DNA in it? So that this, when this molecules produces another cells, the genetic material will be transferred to other cell as well, right? So this cell will function just like the other cell. That means this new cell will function just like its old cell, right? So that is because it has inherited the characteristics from the old cell. How did it inherit these characteristics? These characteristics were actually inherited by the DNA transfer, because this DNA was duplicated, and then this new DNA went into this new cell, right? So genetics means studying about inheritance. The ones who are interested in studying about the DNA molecule, how the DNA molecule is made, and what really happens during this during this inheritance process, right? How is this what you call small things in the DNA get transferred into another cell, and how do they actually produce two different DNA? That means how this DNA produces another DNA. What is the mechanism behind it? What are the enzymes used? So learning about all these things is what you call as studying inheritance. All right, and then we are coming to ecology. Ecology means studying about the environment, right? Studying about the environment that organism basically lives in, right? For example, if you are a botanist, you might be interested in studying ecology, right? That means the area around that plant, right? Basically the area where the plant has grown, right? So ecology means studying about the environment, right? So I think I've been a bit fast. Okay, now I'm going to be a bit slow as well. I just wanted to put some emphasis into that. That's why I ran fast. And these are some easy things That's why I didn't go slow, because otherwise this would seem too boring for you, right? Because these are areas that you might have done before. Plus, this seems very easy. But one thing is, many people forget these areas, right? Now, if I ask you, some people don't remember that studying tissues means histology. Studying gross structure means anatomy, right? So actually, we are studying about genetics in Unit 6. We are studying about inheritance in Unit 6, and you can easily remember that, right? And we are studying about environmental biology in Unit 8, I think. Yes, in Unit 8, we are studying about environmental biology, and environmental biology could be also called as ecology, right? Ecology. But biochemistry, physiology, anatomy, histology, you must remember those particular words, right? Cell biology, of course, studying cells. Histology, from the word histology itself, I understood there is some connection with tissues, right? Mostly it was because there was a S in it, and in the tissues also, the S was pronounced like you should hear the word, the sound of the S more prominently in the word tissues. And when you say histology also, the S is pronounced prominently, right? So by that sound only I remembered, okay, histology is for tissues. So you could use your own techniques. These were my techniques that I used, right? And what do you mean by anatomy? Anatomy means studying about the gross structure of the body. Of course, if you remember physiotherapy, you will remember the word physiology as well. Physiology means studying functions, and biochemistry, it's easy to remember. Bio means biological, chemistry means molecules. So biological molecules, biochemistry, right? So what are the three primary branches? So from here, there's only three things which you need to get into head. I will summarize each page. Now in this page, this is what you need to get. What is biology? That is important. Plus what does bio stand for and what does logo stand for. Plus then the next thing that you have to remember is the three primary branches: zoology, botany, microbiology. What is zoology? The study of animals. What is botany? The study of plants. What is microbiology? The study of microorganisms, right? And what are the areas which we study under these branches, right? So you have to remember these 7 areas. What are those 7 areas? Cell biology, histology, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, genetics, and ecology, right? This is a good SCQ part, right? This is a good SCQ part. Plus, as well as they could also be, I have seen in some term test papers that they have asked this for MCQs as well, right? Okay, and this SAQ has never been asked, so you can expect this in one of the future A-level papers, right? Now let's move into now when I taught you this, did you even read this part? No, right? We usually skip these topics in Unit 1, but let's read that just to make sure we have touched that area so everything is completed. Nature's scope of and importance of biology with reference to challenges faced by mankind. All right, now let's go to issues pertaining to biology. Do you know, before I went for my exam, I studied this part from here to here as an essay. Because in one of the provincial papers which was targeted for our year, they had this essay. And I got scared that I didn't study this as an essay. That means previously I haven't practiced this for the essay topics that I was planning to write. So quickly, I included this into my essay practice and practiced this essay. And I'll tell you how now. I think I have shared the SCQ and essay topics, like how to write the essays perfectly in the class group. I think I have shared with the class students how to write the essay, which I have done for the 2024 batch. So in there, I'm telling for all the students in the class, in there I told you it's not a must to write all the points which is there in the resource book. Sometimes even if you skip a point in the resource book, it doesn't matter. You just have to remember the important points in the resource book and go write them in the essay and come, right? So when I was studying these parts, I skipped most of the parts that I was studying. Now don't get the wrong idea. when it comes to studying structures like plasma membrane, this sarcomere part in unit 5, actually you are 2026 students, right? So when you're studying areas like plasma membrane, mitochondria, or chloroplast, or RNA, DNA, carbohydrates, these areas you shouldn't skip any parts. All the parts are important over there. They haven't beat or like they haven't actually they haven't they are direct to the point in those areas. They haven't beaten around the bush in those areas. But when it comes to these topics, they are not into the direct point most of the time. There are some points that you can't put into your head. For example, I will show you what are those points. Sometimes you can skip those points because when you're studying, now you have to study 2 books for biology at the end of the A levels, right? The end of the A levels, you have to study 2 whole books, and from those 2 books also you should be thorough with a lot of essay points, right? Lot of essays. You should be thorough with almost all the essays in unit 5 that could come from unit 5, not just the guessings. You should never target for the guessings and go. You should practice from the beginning itself, right? So unit 5 essays, you should be thorough with most of the essays which could come from unit 5. But the problem is, after you study all these things, you can't put these things into your head because there are so many unnecessary points in this kind of an essay. But what if it comes instead of a unit 2 essay? What if this pops up? What if this pops out in our exam? Then we could be in trouble, right? So what should you do for that? Therefore, you have to remember the important points and try to somehow keep these points in your head, because anyways, you will be studying these areas for structured essay questions, right? You will study these areas for structured essay questions. So definitely some of these points might be in your head without without much effort. You can actually take these areas into your head because most of the parts you have studied for the structured essay questions. You just have to remember the order of how to write that essay and also what are the important points in that essay. So essays like this, you could skip some areas that you think is hard for you to remember, because sometimes you can't put everything into your head after studying 2 books, after studying 2 complete books for your exam, right? So essays like this, you could just put the points, so somehow at the final exam you can do something and manage to get marks for that essay, right? So sometimes because you have practiced for these sort of essays, sometimes you could get better marks than the other students who have just practiced for the unit 2 essays, right? Now think about a smart student who have studied all the unit 2 essays, but she or he hasn't studied the unit 1 this particular essay. Now I'm not saying this will definitely come for your paper, okay? I'm not saying anything like that, but this has a chance because it was asked in a provincial paper, right? So now think about the unit 2. Now a student who studies all the essay topics, all the probable essay topics for her exam, A-level exam, right? But you are a student who selectively study the unit 2 topics, like you're not as smart. Now no, everyone is equally smart. No one has any higher IQ level or anything like that. It's just a matter of working hard, right? Sometimes some people might have higher IQ level by by genetics itself. We are not going to talk about those people, right? So those are exceptional characters, but generally everyone is normal to each other. That means some people work hard, right? So if you take if you just think you haven't studied that hard, so you are not as hardworking as the other student, but you have studied this particular part. Now think, even if you have studied the important points, like you just have studied the important points, but you somehow write the essay down for that unit 1 that you get, but the other student doesn't know, right, to how to write that essay, so she or he loses all those marks. So think, your Z score would increase, right? So that is so when it comes to essays like this, like these are not common essays, these are rare essay topics. Rare essay topics might come. There is very less chance that this could come, but if it comes, it will be beneficial for you. So you should put some rare essay into your final essay topic list which you are going to practice for your final exam, right? So I had some list like that for my essay, for my A-level exam. Some essay topics that I have, not the guessings. I have like essay guessings are around like 5 topics, right? I have studied around like 30-35 topics for my exam. That means 30 to 35 topics from the whole book I have studied before I went for my exam. 30 to 35 topics fully memorized. And other topics, some parts just, I know some parts, so I could do something at the exam and write that, right? So that's how you actually practice for essays. Now, in these are rare essays. In the rare essay topics, you don't have to learn everything in detail. You just have to remember the important points. First, I will read this. Now, first, I'm not going to tell you how to write the essay. First, I will do this part from here to here. I will discuss everything, and later, after I discuss the structured essay probable questions and the MCQ probable questions, I will tell you how to write and how to select the points when you write an essay on this, right? Because if you see the marking scheme, not all points are given marks in the, not all points in the RB is given marks in the marking scheme, right? Only selected points. So how can you be selective in studying these points when it comes to this part? Because you can't study everything in this part, because this is a rare essay topic, and you can't actually manage to spare like half of your memory for this part, because you have got a lot of things to study, right? Okay, now without further ado, let's move on to that part. First of all, let me check the meeting. Okay. Right. Issues pertaining to biology. Right. Understanding biological diversity. Let's read. At present, our planet is rich in diversity. So it basically says our planet varies, right? That means it has different organisms, and it is rich in diversity. Right. Life on Earth formed around 3.5 billion years ago. That is a MCQ point. Remember, you will be doing this again in Unit 3, but for now, this will be a MCQ point for you. So life on Earth formed when? Around 3.5 billion years ago. Sometimes they change this word B into M, and they say 3.5 million years ago. So when you take one glance at this answer, you might think it's the correct answer and underline that answer. But those are careless mistakes. So make sure you read the answer properly. It's 3.5 million years ago, right? So that means our Earth actually formed around like 4.6 billion years ago. 4.6 billion years ago. But actually, the first organisms, right? The first organisms appeared on Earth around like 3.5 billion years ago. And these organisms were actually prokaryotes. Who are prokaryotes? Now, there are actually two forms of cellular organizations. Cellular organization means what? How our cells are arranged in our body. How our cells are arranged in our body, right? So it could be either prokaryotic cellular organization or eukaryotic cellular organization. In prokaryotic cellular organization, actually, they do not have a proper nucleus. In eukaryotic cellular organization, they do have a nucleus. In prokaryotic organization, no organelles are present. But in eukaryotic organization, they do have organelles present inside their cells, right? And in prokaryotic organization, the main organisms are bacteria and archaebacteria. Who are the bacteria? You know the different types of, there could be different types of bacteria living on Earth. But who are these archaebacteria? Archaebacteria are the special types of bacteria which lives in hot volcanoes or in very cold environments, or sometimes inside the guts of cattle. That means inside the intestines of cattle, right? So all these environments are extreme environments. Could we live in a very hot environment? No. Could we live in a very cold environment? No. Could we live inside the gut of a cow? Kettles? No, right? But these archaebacteria is a special type of bacteria which could live in very extreme environments like this, right? So they are archaebacteria. Then who are the eukaryotic organisms? There are 4 types of eukaryotic organisms. One is fungi. Fungi, for example, you might have seen yeast is a type of fungi. Penicillium is a type of fungi, right? Okay, fungi. And then protista. Protista means the algae that you see. Brown algae, green algae, red algae, plus amoeba is also protista, right? So fungi, protista, and animals and plants are eukaryotic organisms. Animals and plants are eukaryotic organisms. So who was the first organism to be formed on Earth? Is it the prokaryotic organisms or is it the eukaryotic organisms? It is the prokaryotic organisms which were first formed on our Earth, right? The prokaryotic organisms are the ones which were first formed on our Earth, right? Okay, let's see. The first formed organisms are believed to be heterotrophic. What do you mean by heterotrophic? Now, what do you mean by autotrophic? Auto means, the word auto means actually it makes its food by itself. It makes its food by itself, right? So it doesn't depend on any other organisms to get its food. Autotrophic means an organism makes its food by itself. But what do you mean by heterotrophic? Heterotrophic means that organisms depends on another organism for its food. It could be actually eating that other organism to gain that energy. So heterotrophic means actually depending on another organism for food. Right. So the first formed organisms, one of the characteristics were that they were heterotrophic. Then what is the second characteristic? They are anaerobic. What do you mean by anaerobic? What is aerobic? Aerobic means, now I think you might have heard about the word respiration, right? Respiration means actually producing energy in our body. It is a process of producing ATP. ATP means the universal energy carrier, right? ATP, or producing ATP or energy in our body. That is respiration. This respiration could happen when there is oxygen, or it could also happen when there is no oxygen. What do we call the type of respiration that happens in the presence of oxygen? When respiration takes place when oxygen is present, we call it aerobic respiration. Okay? And when this respiration process takes place without using oxygen, we call it anaerobic respiration. Right? So how did the first prokaryotes produce energy? Is it using oxygen or is it without using oxygen? They didn't use oxygen, and that is why they were called as anaerobic, right? So another characteristic of the first formed organism was that they were anaerobic. And the third thing is that they were prokaryotes, right? They were prokaryotes and not eukaryotes. So you have to remember this point. This is a SCQ point. They would ask you, what was the first formed organism? You should say they are heterotrophic anaerobic prokaryotes. Plus, this is also a good MCQ point. With my experience during the last 3 years, I have seen that they have asked these questions. They have given answers like this. Who are the first formed organisms? They have given autotrophic anaerobic prokaryotes as one answer. Another answer is heterotrophic anaerobic prokaryotes, which is the correct answer. Third one, heterotrophic aerobic prokaryotes, and another one, heterotrophic aerobic eukaryotes, and another one, fifth one, autotrophic anaerobic eukaryotes, right? So they could give MCQs as well based on this part, right? So you can write down MCQs as well as SCQs. All right, now let's read this part. Since then, the evolutionary process resulted in the extensive biodiversity which exists in the biosphere now. So, starting from the first prokaryotes underwent evolution. We will be learning what evolution is. Evolution means the changes over generations. That means these prokaryotes kept on producing other prokaryotes over generations. So while producing these, prokaryotes over generations, there could be mutations taking place. What do you mean by mutations? Mutations means changes in their genes, changes in the gene structure. When changes in the gene structure takes place, that organism changes into another organism or another species. So that's how from the prokaryotes other different species were evolved, right? So the start of all the organisms will be the prokaryotes, right? So since then, the evolutionary process which started from the prokaryotes resulted in the extensive biodiversity. That means the biological diversity which exists in our planet today. The main reason was the evolutionary process that happened with the prokaryotes, right? I hope you understood that point. Right. Now let's read. Scientists assume, based on their studies, that there are about 10 million. Now, see, this is word million, not billion. 10 million to over 100 million species in the world. Highlight that area. They could ask you how many species are present in this world. Then you can't just write 10 million. You have to write 10 million, and you can't also write 10 million to 100 million. That would be a wrong answer. Why? It's because you need to write 10 million to over 100 species, right? Over 100 million species, right? Okay, so 10 million to over 100 million species. Over word is important. I think I saw this in one of the term test papers also. They didn't give the marks when the word always, if the word over was not present. So highlight that part. That is an important structured essay part. Right. And see, highlight this word. There is a dynamic, highlight the word dynamic relationship between living world and the inanimate world. What do you mean by dynamic? Dynamic means changing. Static means stationary. So there is a dynamic relationship. That means there is a changing relationship between the living world and the inanimate world, means the non-living world, right? Non-living world. So actually, now living organisms and the non-living organisms have a changing relationship, not a fixed relationship. That's what they have said. And this word dynamic is important because in some MCQs they could change this word into static relationship. But as soon as you see it, you might think, this sounds familiar. So this might be the correct answer, right? Don't make such careless mistakes, right? That's why I'm emphasizing on all these little parts. Otherwise, I could have just read this part, right? Okay. There is a dynamic relationship between living world and the inanimate world, and each and every organism has a specific role in the atmosphere for the existence of the biosphere. So in biological terms, you don't call this world as the earth. You call it as the biosphere, right? You call it as the biosphere. In biological terms, that's how we mention the term world or the earth, right? Biosphere. Okay, the variety of life on earth, okay, here they have used earth. The variety of life on earth, the number of species of plants, animals, and microorganisms, comma, the diversity of genes in this species. See, here they have given a lot of points separated with commas. Read from the beginning. The variety of life on earth. Now, can you remember these points as essay points? It's a bit hard, right? I will come to that essay part later, but I'm just telling you. The variety of life on earth, number one. The number of species of plants. Number 2, animals and microorganisms. The variety of life on earth means the difference, that means the basically the variation that you see in this earth, right? And the number of species of plants means what? It means like how many, like you could see a lot of species of plants, right? You could see a lot of species of animals, right? And you could see a lot of species of microorganisms as well, right? Okay, come on. The diversity of genes in this species. Now, not everyone would have the same gene, right? If everyone's going to have the same gene, then everyone will look like each other, right? There wouldn't be any difference, right? But it's actually different, right? There will be a diversity of genes in the species, right? Different species have actually different genes, right? Okay, and the different ecosystems in Earth. Now, there are different ecosystems. For example, we are living in a city area, right? But plants might be living in a what do you call, tigers might be living in a forest area, right? So different ecosystems are present on this Earth, such as deserts. One is deserts, one is rainforest, one is coral reefs. And if they ask you to name three, now since you are in 2026 students, they could ask an MCQ from this part for term test. But for final essay questions, if they ask different ecosystems, you will have tons of different ecosystems to write, because there you have studied environmental biology. But you all are still 2026 students, so you just have to remember these three different ecosystems. What are they? The deserts. The desert is a type of ecosystem. Rainforests are also another type of ecosystem, and coral reefs are also another type of ecosystem. There is a major gap between deserts and rainforests, right? Because deserts experience what? They experience less rainfall, very low rainfall, right? And very high temperatures, And when it comes to rainforest, they experience high rainfall per year. Annual, like average rainfall is very high per year, and also the temperatures are at a normal level. Plus, there is a diversity of species in rainforest. But when it comes to deserts, only very few species of animals are present in the deserts. And when it comes to coral reefs, they are colorful, they are small, and also they provide the habitat for many species. They provide the habitat for many types of species in the sea, right? Coral reefs are one of the, actually, it is like one of the, what do you call, really important habitat for most of the invertebrates in the sea. You will learn the importance of coral reefs under microbiology area as well, right? Okay, right. Now we will move into understanding the human. Now, what did we learn here? Here we learned understanding biological diversity. So here we learned basically the variation present between different ecosystem, different animals, different plants, different microorganisms, right? But here we are going to learn about the human body. So basically, here you will be learning about the functions of the human body, right? The importance and the functions of the human body. Let's read this. When studying biology, especially by studying histology, what do you mean by histology? Studying of tissues. What do you mean by anatomy? Anatomy means studying the gross structure of the human body, right? So when studying biology, especially when we are studying histology and anatomy of the human body, we can get a good knowledge about the structure of the organs, right? So we can basically, when we are studying these two subjects, we will be when you go to medicine, you will learn about anatomy as well as histology. Both these books are present. So in histology, we will be studying about tissues, and in anatomy, we will be studying about the, what you call, the body parts, right? The gross structure of the human body, right? So here you will be learning about the, here after you learn these two topics, you will get a knowledge about the structure of the organs, right? So this results, right? This results in understanding and appreciation of the organization of the human body. After you learn only, you will get an understanding of how this human body is organized. This is a very complex, what you call, organ system, especially the human body. So when you learn histology and anatomy only, you will get a good understanding about this human body, right? And also after studying these things, after studying these areas, you can also understand the functions. Studying the functions means what? Physiology part also you will get an idea, right? So understanding the physiology of different organ systems and relationship between the structure and functions. Here also, I'm just telling you, I will come back to this part again. I'm just telling you, there were no SCQ points, no MCQ points. For essays also, there's only very few things that you could take from this part, right? But this is just important for your knowledge, right? You should have read this at least once in your A-level time. Plus, it's better if you could study the areas, memorize the areas that I'm telling you, but no need to put much effort because these are rare essay topics, right? I will tell you later, not now. After I finish this part, I will come to how to write the essay on this part, right? Okay, now the third topic, we are moving on to sustainable use and management of natural resources and environment. Let's read this area. Natural resources. What are these natural resources? So in this book, this definition says natural resources are sources of materials and energy. So this definition is easy to study. Natural resources, the word itself, that means what are natural resources? They are sources. Sources means what? A place where something comes, right? A place from where something comes is what you call a source. So these are sources of what? Of materials, right? Materials plus energy, right? Energy, materials and energy which are found naturally. Now, natural resources are sources of materials and energy. You must mention that they are found naturally, right? Otherwise, we do have artificially made materials as well. We do have artificially made energy as well, right? So we must mention which are found naturally, right? So that is the basic definition of natural resources. And what do we use these natural resources for? We use these in everyday life, right? For example, if you take the trees, if you take the woods, nowadays we might not be using the woods, but yeah, we do use the woods, right, to make papers. So papers are sort of like a natural resource. So we use them in a everyday life. You can say we use books in everyday life. Those come from natural resources, right? And also for our economic development, right? Because of natural resources only, we can earn an income, right? Nowadays it might be because of technology, but even to develop this technology, first we needed some money, right? That money came from by selling the natural resources in our particular land, right? So all these natural resources are important in everyday life and for our economic development. So what is the definition of natural resources? They are sources of materials and energy found naturally which are used in everyday life and for economic development, right? So that is an SCQ point, right? That is a SCQ point. Okay, right. Now let's move on to the other part. These natural resources are limited on Earth. Some MCQs they might give you as these natural resources are unlimited on Earth. No, that is not true. Our trees, if you are going to chop these trees to make papers, one day all these trees would be dead if you are not going to plant new trees, right? And also, if you are going to use water and pollute the water, we will lose access to good water, right? Fresh water. So all these natural resources are limited, right? And especially when our human population increases, what happens? These natural resources will decrease, right? So you can see due to the increase of growth rate of human population, overuse of natural resources is taking place. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What is the reason of, no, what is the What is the threat? What is the threat for the depletion of natural resources? What is the threat for the depletion of natural resources? That is my question. I expect you can look at the resource book and give me a complete answer. I just need a complete answer to see how you would attempt a structured essay question. Try to answer that particular question. I need everyone's answer. What is the threat of depletion of natural resources? No, I'm asking what is the threat for the depletion of natural resources? The threat. Yes, in a way, the depletion of. No, I'm actually asking you what causes this depletion of natural resources? True, it is the overuse of natural resources, but I'm basically asking what leads to it. This has been asked in a term test paper as well. No, it's actually the increase in human population, right? Many people write what is the reason for the overusage of natural resources, or what is the reason for the depletion of natural resources. Many people write it as humans. No, then now my expected answer from you was humans, but that would also be a wrong answer. Do you know why? Because we have to write increase in the growth rate of human population. We need to write a complete answer. We need to make sure that we write increase in the growth rate of human population, because normal human population, even though the normal human population is there, it won't cause much harm for the natural resources which are present. But when human populations are going to increase, the need for these natural resources will increase, right? So when this need increases, we will have to use these natural resources more, and there would be a depletion of these natural resources taking place, right? So the expected answer is due to the increase of growth rate of human population, right? What is the expected answer? Due to the increase of growth rate of human population only, these natural resources are being overused, right? So you have to remember not just the human population, but due to the increase of the growth rate of the human population, right? Now let's read the other area. Due to over exploitation of natural resources, that means because we are using these natural resources more than the way that we should use this, that means we are exceeding the limit of using these natural resources, and we are using more than what we should use. So there will be some environmental problems which will arise when there is some over exploitation of the natural resources. Let's see what it is. These are the environmental problems that will take place, right? The first one is environmental pollution, right? Environmental pollution. Do you know the presence of trees will purify the air? The presence of trees will purify the air. What if you chop down all the trees and only very few trees are present in our earth? That means our air will be polluted, right? The air pollution would be high, right? The air pollution would be very high, right? The air pollution would be very high. Plus, next is loss of biodiversity. When we chop down the trees, or when we, now I'm not always taking the examples of trees, but it is the easiest example to take. So if I'm going to take the trees again, if you're going to chop down the trees, there are many species living in these trees, right? For example, there could be birds, there could be a lot of insects living in these trees, and sometimes these forests might be in a habitat for the mammals like tigers, bears, right? So when we chop down these trees, these animals will lose a habitat, right? When they lose their habitat, they will get actually stranded, right? They will get stranded. When they get stranded, soon they will not be adapted to this environment, like the new environment. So most of the species would get extinct when their habitat is lost, right? Most of the species would get extinct when their habitat is lost. So most of our species will be eliminated from our planet Earth. When this happens, we will lose this biodiversity. What is biodiversity? It is the biological diversity. That means the variations present in this planet Earth, right? So if the amount of species are going to drop down, the variations present in this Earth will also drop down, right? So due to the overexploitation of natural resources, we will lose biodiversity. Plus, we will have environmental pollution as well, right? And the third thing is desertification. Again, I'm taking the trees, and it is also related with the trees. If we are going to chop down all the trees, then definitely there won't be, like, most of the forest will be completely cleared out, right? Most of the forest will be completely cleared out, and they will be converted into barren lands. They will just be converted into barren lands. Sometimes after you cut down this tree, it's not sometimes even suitable for growing new crops, right? It's not sometimes even suitable for growing new crops, and sometimes it might also not be suitable for building up cities. You might need a lot of technology to improve this land and build up new buildings and everything. So most of the time these will be converted into barren lands of no use, right? So desertification will takes place, and even if you build cities, you will only plant artificial trees here and there, right? So there's no natural environments, right? So therefore you cannot, the climate change will definitely happen, right? Especially when there's no trees, they cannot control the global warming. Global warming levels will increase, and definitely the sun's temperature or the heating up of our earth, global warming process will also increase, which will also speed up, which will also help the desertification process, right? So there are three things which takes place when we overuse the natural resources. One is pollution of the environment. Two, loss of biodiversity. Three, desertification. This is a structured essay question which was asked in the previous past papers, right? Okay. Now let's move on to the next part. Hence, to overcome the above problems, management of natural resources and environment should be practiced. Okay, that means to reduce these problems or to prevent these things from happening, we should have a knowledge about managing these natural resources, right? So to have a knowledge, to practice, to reduce these problems by managing these natural resources, we need to have a sound knowledge of biology. We need to know biology to prevent these things, right? So knowledge of biology is useful to bring about remedies for the above problem, right? Now let's read the sustainable food production part. Before, what did we read? Before, we read the sustainable use of management and natural resources and environment. Now we are using sustainable food production. Sustainable food production means, now here itself they have said the definition. The definition is production of sufficient amounts of food. You must mention sufficient, because sustainable food production, otherwise you could have just written producing food, but we don't know whether the food that we produce is enough for the human population, right? So we must write production of sufficient amount of food for the human population, but that is also using environmentally safe methods, because most of the time people nowadays are using genetically modified crops, which has a lot of disadvantages, right? So no, nowadays very few people uses organic foods, but sustainable food production means actually the usage of organic food, because organic foods are environmentally safe, right? But when it comes to genetically modified crops, they are not environmentally safe. So sustainable food production means the production of sufficient amounts of food the production of sufficient amounts of food for the human population, right? Not just for you and your family. You must mention for the human population, right? Because most of the time many people forget to write these sentences. What is sustainable food production? It is the production of sufficient amount of food. For whom? For the human population. Using what? Using environmentally safe methods, right? So you have to ask these questions and remember these what you call definitions in your head. Write down STQ in that part as well. SCQ point, right? And what is the current human population? Even though in this book they have said 7 billion, originally, now in 2024 the human population is 8 billion, but we can't go with that. We have to go with what is in our resource book, right? The current human population is about 7 billion, okay, and it is expected to be double in less than 40 years. That means now let's say this book was printed in 2018, right? So 2018 to 2058 it will be around like 14 billion, right? 14 billion will be there, right? So now the current human population is 7 billion, but they are expecting it to be what do you call doubled in less than 40 years. So nowadays we can use that means we can use environmental safe methods to produce food for the 7 billion which is present. Even now, like most of the people, like around like 30% of the people are starving, right? So we can't say we are actually feeding everyone, right? But anyhow, sustainable food production means actually trying to feed everyone using environmentally safe methods. But just think here, even with 7 billion, 30% of people are starving. So what will happen if this increases into 14 billion people? Then how many people would starve over there? There would be a lot of people starving, right? So that is why we have to implement the sustainable food production into action. We need to implement this. Let's see what they have meant under this sustainable food production. What are the procedures we can use to feed all the food all the humans in the human population with sufficient amounts of food? Let's see. Therefore, for the survival of human beings, sustainable food production is necessary. Right. So to maintain sustainable food production, these are the methods that they have used, right? These methods have been used with the knowledge in biology. Let's see what these methods. The first method is the first actually the what do you call one of the not reasons, one of the solutions that they have given, one of the solutions that they have given to somehow overcome this problem is production of high yielding. Can you see? You can easily study because two starts from production. One is production of high yielding means what? Yield means they are actually, now if you take plants, the yield means the vegetation that you receive from the plants, right? For example, let's say if it is a tomato harvest, the tomatoes are the yield, right? The tomatoes are the yield. And if you take animals, if you take the hens, what is the yield? The yield or the products that we are taking will be the eggs, right? Eggs. So likewise, we should use high yielding varieties. Sometimes for that, we can use a safe method called selective breeding. That means when it comes to a flock of hens, 2-3 hens will produce a lot of eggs when compared to the other hens. Maybe it's because these 2-3 hens are healthy when compared to all the other hens. So we can take these 2-3 hens and we can breed them, right? Breed them with the we can breed them, right? And then after we breed them, we will get what do you call, not genetically identical, we will get genetically different, but somehow they will also have this gene of producing a lot of eggs, right? That is what you call selective breeding. From a population, we are choosing the best individuals and we are breeding them to produce more offsprings, right? That is what you call as selective breed. So after selective breeding, you can select the high yield, you can produce high yielding varieties. Even when it comes to plants also, you can take specific plant individuals which produces a lot of yields, because some tomato plants might produce ripe big tomatoes when compared to other tomato plants. So you can take this tomato plant and then take the pollen or the take the pollen and then breed and then somehow distribute the pollen with the other plant, distribute the pollen or take the seeds from this plant and germinate them to produce more plants like this tomato plant. So by that we are producing another high yielding varieties of plants, right, of tomato plants. So the first solution is production of high yielding varieties of plants and animals, right? That is the first solution. Then the second solution is production of disease resistant varieties of plants and animals. Now, what if these hens catch diseases always? That means they are not healthy enough to produce the eggs, right? Most of the hens would die from these diseases, right? Because now in a farm you can't treat all the hens, you can't give medicines to all the hens in a farm, right? So most of the unhealthy hens will definitely die, right? So in that case we have to use healthy hens, or we have to use disease resistant hens, right? So sometimes there is a disease resistant gene in some organisms, right? In some organisms, so for example, this gene has a disease resistant gene in its body. Maybe it's because maybe it's due to evolution. It has a disease resistant trait, it has a disease resistant gene, so we produce more offsprings from this bird, from this hen. So more hens will be produced with this disease resistant gene. So at the end, we will be able to get disease resistant varieties of hens, right? We will be able to get disease resistant varieties of hens. When diseases are less, we can get a good deal, right? At the end, disease resistant varieties means what? At the end, we will get a healthy plus a good yield from those plants and animals, right? Which is safe for the consumption of humans, right? Which is safe for the consumption of humans. And the third thing is improving the post harvest technological methods. Now, how many foods are we throwing? Now, in the market, most of the foods are being thrown, right? Because they have not been sold, right? They have not been sold, so we throw most of the products. And even sometimes what happens is, now a lot of carrots are produced in Nuwara area, right? A lot of carrots are produced, but then when you're transferring them, if you do not handle these carrots properly, if you are just throwing these carrots into the the truck that you are carrying, right, into the truck that you're carrying, if you're just throwing the trucks, and inside the truck also there's no good conditions for the truck, if that truck is a dirty, dusty, unhygienic place for the carrots or the foods, then definitely there is a chance that these cats can, not the cats, the carrots can get rotten, right? That these carrots could get rotten or could deteriorate with time, right? That means transferring from Nuwara to Colombo is a period of around like 3-4 hours, right? Plus also, now the day that they are being transferred into into that particular lorry, they won't take it to Colombo, right? They would stay for around like, not to Colombo, to any place, to Galle or to any place, right? So let's say Galle, right? So if they're transferring it to Galle, sometimes this truck would just stay in one place for some time, right? They're not going to transfer it within one day, right? Maybe it's due to fuel problems, right? Maybe it's due to road problems, maybe it's due to the drivers in that particular country, like Sri Lankan drivers, right? They don't have a big responsibility too, right? So might be because of these things, when they reach the market, the carrots are not in good conditions, so most of the carrots will be thrown out from that market. And even when people come to buy the carrots, they will be like, what has happened to these carrots? These carrots do not look good. Most of the carrots have been spoiled. Not just carrots, I'm talking about all the vegetables like onions also. These onions do not look good. What has happened to these onions? The people ask, right? The customers ask, right? And most of the carrots or those vegetables should be are thrown out and the end from the market, right? Even in Nuwara itself, most of the vegetables are being thrown out. If you remember the COVID-19 season, during the COVID-19 season, due to this transportation issues also, most of these these vegetables that were produced were thrown out, right? So these vegetables could have been actually the food of lot of humans in Sri Lanka, right? Lot of humans in this planet Earth, right? But if they are going to be just thrown out, then we can't say that there is a sustainable food production in that country. Can be? No, right? So to have a sustainable food production, we should improve the post-harvest. Post-harvest means after you harvest it, how you manage those products. That is what you call as post-harvest technological methods. The storage, the transportation, all these are post-harvest technological methods. You should store them in a cool environment so that the freshness is restored, right? The freshness retains in those products, right? So that is what you call as post-harvest technological methods. Now let's move on to understanding plant life. Right. It is just like understanding the human body and functions, a small part. Let's read. Plants are the primary producers in the world. We know that because from plants only the energy is being transferred in all the food chains, right? Plants are the producers. The energy is created in the plants, right? From sunlight using photosynthesis. See, highlight this word, all the. Remember, all the, not some or not many. All the animals depend directly or indirectly on plants, right? That is a MCQ point. All the animals depend directly or indirectly on plants. Therefore, understanding plant life is important. As time passes, human population increases. Hence, the productivity must be increased. That's true. When the human population increases, their needs also increases, right? To supply these needs, the productivity of plants should also be increased. Therefore, to increase the productivity of plants, that means, let's say this is a normal tomato plant. It produces only 5 fruits per week, five fruits per month, right? 5 fruits per month. But if you know about biology, if you have learned these biological functions and everything, you could be able to apply some fertilizers or do something and to increase the yield up to around like 10 fruits per week or 10 fruits per month, right? So understanding plant biology is essential for producing these high yielding plants as well as disease resistant plants. Especially for disease resistant plants, you will apply pesticides and all, herbicides, pesticides, right? To make sure that these plants will not get any diseases, right? Okay, so understanding plant life was just a simple topic. Now let's move on to understanding diseases and causes. Right. Here it's an important part. Let's read it. To maintain healthy human body, that means to maintain good health in our body, we should know how these diseases are caused, right? Still, we cannot find a real reason for the cancer. Even though we know it's by mutations, we never know when the cancer would form in our body, right? Because still we haven't really found how, what is the probability, what is the reason I got my cancer. We never know, right? Many people are just suggesting some postulations. This could be the reason that you got this could be the reason, right? So we need to have the knowledge to understand the causes of the disease. And but anyways, we know the effects of the cancer, right? What happens when we get the cancer. And nowadays we have technology to screen different types of cancers, to screen different types of heart diseases, right? Nowadays we do have that technology. Some dangerous diseases which exist in the current world are non-communicable diseases. What do you mean by non-communicable? That means it cannot be transferred from one person to the other person, right? It cannot be transferred from one person to the other person. If you take fever, if you take viral flu, if you take cough, it could be transferred, especially if you take tuberculosis fever. It could be transferred from another person to another person, right? But diseases like cancers, just because one of your aunties have cancers and you are living with that. No, don't take aunties. Let's say another person, one of your close people, one of not close people, one of you, not even friends. Let's say someone has a cancer, okay? A patient has a cancer and you are somehow related to that and you are going near that person, you won't get a cancer, right? Cancers are non-communicable diseases. I hope no one's having a cancer, no, nothing, right? I'm sorry if I said anything wrong. Okay, so non-communicable diseases such as cancers, heart diseases, diabetes, chronic renal diseases. So types of non-communicable diseases are what? First one is a cancer. Second one is a heart disease, right? Heart diseases. Now, heart diseases are not transferred. Just because someone got a heart attack, you won't get a heart attack just because you're staying next to that person, right? No, not like that. And diabetes also, it is now, I'm not saying that these are genetically linked. Non-communicable doesn't involve non-communicable doesn't mean that it could be transferred by genetics. Okay, heart diseases could be transferred by genetics. Okay, there is a close relationship with genetics when it comes to heart diseases. Diabetes also, there is a relationship with genetics. Cancers itself, no genetics are involved in most of the cases. So heart diseases and diabetes, genetics are involved, but they're non-communicable. That means just because you have it, the person next to you won't have it, right? And chronic renal diseases means especially the diseases related to the urinary system, like the kidneys, right? Like the kidneys, okay, like the kidneys and all, especially the CKDU, right? CKDU disease, chronic renal diseases like CKDU, right? So you will learn about these things in detail under each of the topics that we are talking about the heart diseases, about the kidney, about the chronic CKDU diseases as well, right? Okay, CKDU means chronic kidney disease of unknown etiology, right? Unknown etiology. That means the cause is not yet found for that. The cause is not yet found. Right. So what are the communicable diseases? Diseases such as dengue. Dengue could be transferred, right? And diseases like AIDS. AIDS could be transferred by the transfusion of bloods, right? And by using needles, right? It could be transferred. Right. Now let's read these diseases and understand. Cancers. See, the causes for this is not fully understood yet. We have not fully learned about the causes. Cancers are one of the leading causes of death. Those are the 2 points that you have to remember. One is the cause for cancer is not understood yet, and the other thing is cancers are one of the leading causes of death. And AIDS is a viral disease. AIDS is actually caused by the virus called HIV, which is human immunodeficiency virus, right? It is a viral disease and it is actually a serious and growing health problem worldwide. Right? Previously, many people were shy to say that they had AIDS, but nowadays, many people are openly saying that they have AIDS, and that have been actually a topic which has been discussed worldwide, right? Topic which has been discussed worldwide. And heart diseases. Heart disease is also, nowadays we eat a lot of unsaturated fatty acids, trans fatty acids, right? Because of this, a lot of saturated fatty acids and trans unsaturated fatty acids. Because of that, there is a high risk that we would get atherosclerosis, right? Atherosclerosis, which is actually the thickening of the arteries. Now, if we take this is the artery wall, the deposition of saturated fatty acids and trans unsaturated fatty acids makes the wall thinner. See, can you see the wall is thinner? The lining, that means the tube is thinner. So actually, it's hard for the blood to travel through these arteries, right? That means actually blood blockage will happen. When blood blockage will happen, the heart won't be supplied with enough blood, right? In that cases, we would get heart diseases, right? Or heart attacks, right? Slowly our heart tissue will die and some parts of our heart will not be functioning properly, right? So heart disease is also a serious and growing health problem worldwide. Here also causes are not fully understood yet, even though sometimes we think it's mainly because we are eating trans fatty acids, fats and saturated fats. Sometimes it could be due to stress as well, right, in some people. So the real cause is not really understood. Okay, chronic renal disease. In Sri Lanka, in osmoregulation part, you will learn what are the areas in Sri Lanka which this is present, especially in areas where actually you don't have this what do you call where you use a lot of agriculture, like Polonnaru areas and all, especially the farmers are affected with this disease in Sri Lanka, right? Especially the farmers, because they do not have access to good water over there, right? So in Sri Lanka recently, CKDU has become a serious health problem. CKDU means chronic kidney disease of unknown etiology. Unknown etiology means the cause is not yet found. The reason why it happens is not yet found, right? So we don't know it. That is why we have said chronic kidney disease of unknown etiology, right? Currently, scientists are working on prevention. That means how to prevent these four diseases, not just the four diseases, to all these diseases, and how we can cure these diseases, right? Like how we can cure what are the cures for these diseases. For cancers, you can do chemotherapy, right? And for heart diseases, you can drink medicine. For chronic renal diseases also, you can do a transplant or something, right? So scientists are actually working on these parts, and for that also they need the knowledge of biology. Here actually we are talking about why we need the knowledge of biology in every part. Here also we talked about for sustainable food production, we need the knowledge on biology to understand plant life. We need the knowledge on biology to understand diseases and causes. We need the knowledge on biology, right? And here we are going to learn solving some legal and ethical issues. Here also we need the knowledge of biology, right? Here also we need the knowledge of biology, right? Knowledge and application of biological concept is important in solving some legal issues. They could ask you what are these legal issues. So highlight these parts. Parentage testing. That means to check whether your son or daughter is really your whether you are the father or the mother of your son or daughter. Usually you don't check for mother, right? You check for the father, right? So whether you are the father of the particular son or daughter, right? So for parentage testing, you need the knowledge on biology, right? Actually, that is actually done by a DNA test, right? Which you will learn in molecular biology. And in criminal investigations, that means basically in forensics you use this, right? Forensics, you use the knowledge of biology, right? Using forensics, you can understand who the criminal is. By a drop of saliva or by a drop of blood, you can actually track that murderer or that criminal, right? So this biology, this what you call biological concept, is also used in criminal investigations, and it is also used to solve immigration disputes, right? That means when you, for example, some might not be the what you call some might just be migrants from another country, but they haven't come in fair way to that particular country. That means they have come secretly, right? That means without using passports or anything, they have come secretly, right? Like refugees, right? Refugees of another country, right? So to solve these immigration disputes, we can use these biological concepts, right? We can use the biological concepts, right? Also, you can see what is the biological concept used in these three areas. DNA fingerprinting, right? You can use the DNA fingerprinting in these three above circumstances, right? So what are the three circumstances or the three legal issues where we use biology? Number one, parentage testing. Number two, criminal investigations. Number three, to solve immigration disputes, right? First one is parentage testing. Second one is in criminal investigations, right? And the third one is to solve immigration disputes. And in all these three cases, what is the biological concept that we use? That is the use of DNA fingerprinting, right? So if someone asks you, um, what are the issues pertaining to biology? You have to write what are the issues pertaining to biology. You have to write either one of these sentence, one of these topics, right? Those are the issues pertaining to biology, right? So that could also be another big SCQ, right? They haven't ever asked that before because these are the subtopics on the issues pertaining to biology. So you have to have a knowledge. You can easily study this one, right? Solving some legal and ethical issues that sound as an issue, right? And also you can study this sustainable food production. That is also an issue, right? Because we can't produce food sustainably. So that is an issue. So somehow we should find a way to do that, right? And the third thing is sustainable use and management of natural resources. So basically they ask for three things to write. So you can remember these three things if the others are too hard for you to remember. Right. Now, what will you do? Now I will come to the essay part in this. What will you do if you get to write an essay on this part? Right. Shall we take a 2 minutes water break and then let's come into this topic. I'm taking a 2 minutes water break. Yes, increase of growth rate of human population. Good, that is the answer. Right, back into the lesson. Okay, now how do we write an essay on this part? It's like this. I told you this is a rare essay topic, but if it comes, you should be ready for it, right? So first things if they ask you to write, now this will be the fifth essay topic. Fifth means essay topics, essay questions start from fifth one, right? Fifth one. Because after four structured essays questions only, they ask you the essay topics, right? So let's see. The essay question will be, what are the issues pertaining to biology, right? What are the issues pertaining to biology? Now you can write like this. You can first write the issues pertaining to biology are understanding biological diversity. You can write these three things, these five things that you remember. The topics, right? Topics. Just think you forget this understanding plant life topic. Don't think about it. Just write everything that you remember, right? You will get marks for things that you remember. Don't waste time on things that you can't remember. After you finish this essay and after you move on with the other essays, sometimes quickly you will recall the part that you couldn't remember, and then again you can come to that part, put a crow leg, and then put a crow leg, and you can then write that forgotten part as well, right? So don't waste time, or else you can keep a small space and go as well, right? Okay, so that is those are the first things that you need to write when they ask you to write an essay on issues pertaining to biology, right? And then what is the next thing that you should write? The next thing is, first you have to take understanding biological diversity, and then you have to explain that, right? That means you have to write these are the issues. No, you can write understanding biological diversity. You can put a colon, and you can write the essay. Remember, you can't write the essay in point form. You have to write the essay in essay format, right? No points are allowed in the essay paper, right? Everything should be in the point form. I think I have clearly said that in the structured essay and the essay tips that I have given in the 2024 class. I have shared with the 2025 students as well as 2026 students. So if you have seen that, I have told you not to use points, right? You have to write it like an essay, right? You have to write the essay like an essay. So you can write understanding biological diversity. You can put a semicolon, and you can write this point. This is a good point. At present, our planet is rich in diversity. You can easily remember that. That's a short sentence, and it directly goes into your head, right? So at present, our planet is rich in diversity. At present, our planet is rich in diversity. That is the first one. And the second point, of course, won't you study it for your structured essay questions? You should know that life on Earth formed around 3.5 billion years ago, right? Then you can write the next point as this. And also, even the third point, look, won't you study it for the structured? Don't you know who are the first organisms? You know, right? The first organisms were actually the heterotrophic anaerobic prokaryotes, right? But the first organisms were the heterotrophic anaerobic prokaryotes. But actually, when I was studying, I dropped out this part because it was too much for my head, right? I dropped out this part and I made sure that I remembered these three sentences. And then again, I remembered this sentence because this is a sentence that you should remember for the structured essays as well. So I remembered this sentence again. And also, after studying this sentence, I really love the next sentence. Look at the next sentence. Because I always remember this came for MCQ. They asked in one MCQ, they took this answer and they were like, there is a static relationship. Then I understood, so this is a MCQ point which has been tested. So it could also, so it's easy for me to study that, right? So I always remember there is a dynamic relationship between the living world and the inanimate world. And that was also easy for me to remember. After studying this part, I could easily remember this part as well. So how many points have I written? I have written all these points in this part. And here also I have written most of the points except for 1 point. So I will get a lot of marks, right? In this part, I will get a lot of marks. But I didn't write this part. But I remembered to write, I always remember to write the different ecosystems on Earth. I made my own sentence. The different ecosystems on Earth are deserts, rainforest, and coral reefs, which are part of a biological diversity. So they will give marks for deserts, rainforest, and coral reefs because I have included 3 different ecosystems. It was hard for me to remember all these things, so I shortened it, made my own point. I don't know whether they would give it as a answer or not, but I studied that point, right? Then I moved into the second part. In the second part, I studied this part by force because I should write something in this part, right? It's hard for me to remember everything, so I put some effort and studied this part, but the rest I forgot because I can't remember everything for an essay when I have learned around like 35 to 40 essays for my exam, right? So it will be hard for me to learn all these essays. If I'm going to tell you the list of essays that I learned everything in detail. When it comes to when they say heart was coming, I didn't study only the heart. I also studied the immune system areas as well. The osmoregulatory area as well. I studied so many things and met, right? Then only you can be sure for or confident for your essays, right? So it was too much for me to have this in my head, so I skipped this part. I studied only this for the essay. But this part, I knew that this was like a treasure for me. I could get a lot of marks from this part. Why? Because we are studying this for our structured essay, right? Let's see. Then I wrote this part and put a colon. Then I wrote what are natural resources, 1 point. And it's easy to remember these natural resources are limited on Earth, another point. And what happens when we overuse this? No. What is the reason for the overuse? That is due to the increase of growth rate. Another mark for this. If you remember this also, you can write it and get 1 mark, right? I just read that part and remembered. Sometimes I would have forgotten it as well with the exams conditions and all. It doesn't matter, right? Then I knew these parts for sure. Then I wrote these parts for each one. You will get 1 point each, right? And then I didn't care about these parts. I wrote knowledge of biology is useful to bring remedies for the above problems. Another mark for that. Right. Then I went to sustainable food production, which is also easy. Sustainable food production is what? After you write the definition, you get another mark. Then you talk about the human population now, and then you say it will be double in less than 40 years. And then you get 1 mark for that, right? So you can write to maintain sustainable. I skipped this part. No, I think I remember this part. This is also an easy part. I think I remembered. So you can also study because it's like a flow. therefore for the survival of human. This is like, just saying it something, right? Sometimes you might not even get a mark for this in the marking scheme. You might or might not get, depends on the marking scheme. But then I wrote this part, and then I wrote these three things. For these three things, 3 marks. Then I wrote understanding plant life. The first thing that you remember is plants are the primary producers, right, in the world. So you get a 1 mark for that. Then you have to write this point that you remembered. Definitely this is a good MCQ point to be remembered. All the animals depend directly or indirectly on plants. Then you get another mark for that. And therefore understanding plant life is important. Isn't that easy? Another mark, right? Then I just studied this area. Didn't put much force. I studied this area. If I remembered, I would have got a mark, right? If I didn't remember, I didn't care about that part either, but I remember the most important areas. And understanding diseases also, I studied what are the non-communicable diseases, what are the communicable diseases, got 2 marks for that, 1 mark for that each. That means totally 2 marks. And I wrote cancers, wrote the 2 main points. AIDS, wrote the point. Heart disease, wrote the point. Chronic renal disease, wrote the point. And I wrote scientists are working on prevention measures. And then when it comes to solving legal issues, for writing these 3, definitely you will get 3 points. And what is the biological concept used? DNA fingerprinting. You will get another point for mentioning about DNA fingerprinting. So can you see, a lot of marks are earned when you write this essay if you can remember the most important points. I have skipped some points. Sometimes in the marking scheme, they may have allocated marks for that, but I don't care because I have written most of the points that I remembered. And what is the benefit of doing that? Now, this is not a common essay topic. This is a very rare and a weird essay topic. Sometimes no one would think that this essay would come, but this came in a provincial paper. So if this could come in a provincial paper, that means it could also come in a past, in a future paper. We never know, it might not come also. So what is the benefit of studying this and going? Benefit of studying this part, you have the confidence. Not everyone would do that, right? Not everyone would do or study most of the biology essays and go. You will have the confidence, and you don't have to put much effort into studying these areas. You're already studying it for the structure. You just have to learn the organization of this part and go before the test, right? So that's it. It's a really easy part, right? Now let's move on to a new area. The nature and the organizational patterns of the living world, right? Okay, let's read. In accordance with different criteria, we can see a diversity among living organisms, right? Organisms are diverse based on 4 things actually, based on the size, based on the shape, based on the form, and based on the habitats. Can you see? Living organisms show a wide range of variations. This was a point in the Royal College paper 2022, Royal College paper 2022, third term test grade 12. Third term test grade 12, first MCQ, right? They have said living organisms show a wide range of variations. Sometimes if you haven't read this part, with the other answers, you might get confused. Is this a correct statement? Was this a statement in the RB? Or was this just like a general statement taken from taken out from nowhere in the resource book? You will get confused, right? Okay, so living organisms show wide range of variations. Now you might think these as easy, but when you get the paper, you're alone, not with your RB, right? At that time, you might not remember whether these were the points in the RB, right? That's why I'm emphasizing on all these parts, right? So organisms vary based on 4 things. What are those? The size, the shape, the form, and the habitat, right? Let's go with the size. Now, size, when it comes to size, the smallest is actually the bacteria. The size ranges from 1 micrometer to 5 micrometer. But if you go to that prokaryotic section in Unit 2, prokaryotes and eukaryotes, I have done for the 2026 batch. So prokaryotes and eukaryotes, you can see they have given the sizes 0.5 micrometers to 5 micrometers. So what should you study? I think it's better for you to study the 0.5 micrometer to 5 micrometer part. But if you even write 1 micrometer to 5 micrometer, you will get that mark because that was an answer in the RB. So no one can say wrong, but not for prokaryotes, okay? For bacteria, because they have said bacteria. In that table, they have just said prokaryotes, right? Prokaryotes could be bacteria or could be archaebacteria, right? So when it comes to bacteria, if they ask you what is the size range of bacteria, you could either write this or either write that, right? Because when it comes to unit 3 also, you will come with a size range. I will tell over there which size range you should pick from these three to be on the safe side, right? For now, I mean, you are not actually, even if you write anything, you'll be on the safe side. But I'll tell you with the difference in unit 3, right? Okay, so bacteria size ranges from 1 micrometer to 5 micrometers, right? And giant sequoia, which is also called the giant redwood, it is around like 100 meters, right? Giant sequoia tree is 100 meters. This is the giant sequoia tree. You could see how tall and how big it is, right? This is the giant sequoia tree or the giant redwood tree, right? It is very tall, right? As you can see, it is really tall. This is just the root area, like the trunk, the lower trunk region, right? Then shape. How does the shape of the organism that varies from organism to organism? There are cylindrical organisms. If you take the earthworms, there are cylindrical organisms, right? And there are streamline. Streamline means because of the shape, like streamline means maybe you have learned in physics about the Bernoulli theorem also in 2026 students. If you have learned about hydrostatics by now, you might have learned about the Bernoulli theorem. Bernoulli theorem, you are learning about the streamline. Streamline means sort of like straight line, flowing in straight line, especially when there is a an obstacle like this, it flows taking that particular path, right? Taking that shape of that object. So if you take this particular fish, the waves are flowing in a path like this, right? The waves are flowing in a path like this. So actually they have a streamlined shape. Because of this shape only, the water waves are actually flowing. Their movements are like that, right? So streamlined shape of birds and fish and cylindrical shape of earthworms, right? Then the fourth one is the form. What do we talk about? What do we mean by the form? Form means how many cells are present. Some cells might just have only one single, some organisms might just have one single cell. Those are called unicellular organisms. And one example is amoeba. Now, can you see this amoeba is in italic form, right? When you write italic words, you have to start with the capital letter and underline that word, right? You will learn the reason in unit 3, right? It is actually due to binomial nomenclature. When you write scientific words, you should always start with the, when you write them, you should always start with the capital and then underline that word. When you are typing, you should italicize them, right? You should italicize them. So form is unicellular. And multicellular animals are also there, any plants or animals. So an example of unicellular animal is unicellular protista. Amoeba is a protista, right? You will learn about protista in unit 3. So amoeba is a protista, okay, right? Then you might also have heard about this in unit 2 we discussed Euglena is a protista, right? Euglena is a protista, right? Habitat could be either terrestrial, that means on the land, right? Terrestrial means on the land. So for example, rat, it could be terrestrial, or it could be aquatic, right? Aquatic, like the fish. Or it could be arboreal. Arboreal means living in the branches of the trees or living in the trees. That means the lories, right? Lories. And aerial means living in the air, birds, right? Birds. So living in trees means arboreal. Aerial means living in the air. Now this is the peak of a loris, right? Peak of a loris. In Sinhala, you call this the Unahapulua. right? This is the picture of the loris, and this is the picture of the amoeba, right? This is the picture of the amoeba. Right. Now let's move on to the characteristics of organisms, right? Let's move on to the characteristics of organisms. In order to survive, each organism, whether simple or complex, must be able to perform certain functions. Okay, that means ranging from the simplest unicellular animal to the most complex animal, all these have what you call certain functions. To do these functions, there are some characteristics of these organisms. Let's learn what are these characteristics. Now you have to remember there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characteristics of these organisms. You have to remember all these 7 characteristics of the organisms, right? First one is the order and organization. Order and organization means basically starting from the smallest unit to the largest unit of that organism, how that organism is made. For example, if you take a human, the human is actually made from the cells. That is the simplest part, right? And then the tissues, right? And then the organs, right? Then the organ systems, right? Organs, if you take the eye, that is an organ. And if you take the organ system, it could be the sensory system, right? And then it forms the final organism, right? So order and organization means the organization of different levels to actually from the simplest level to the largest level to perform some functions. Let's see. See, from molecular level to biosphere. Biosphere, there is an order and organization in organisms to perform their biological activities efficiently. Now, you do not have to remember what is order and organization or anything like that, but here you can remember this part because they could ask it for an MCQ. It's the lower level components which are organized in a methodical pattern in upper level to make it more sufficient. Sometimes they mix these two words. They say upper level components are organized in methodical pattern in lower level, and they could actually confuse you at the exam. So you have to make sure it's the lower level ones which makes the upper level ones, right? For example, what are the organs? Plant, leaf, and human eyes. So plant leaves and human eyes are made from little structures, right? Finally, only the plant leaf is made, and finally, only the human eyes are made, right? So order and organization, there isn't much to learn anything over there. You just have to learn the characteristic that order and organization are present in all living organisms. And what is the second structure of second characteristics of all organism? That is the metabolism. What do you mean by metabolism? Metabolism means the sum of all chemical activities, right? Metabolism means now chemical activities taking place inside an organism is what you call as metabolic activities, right? Chemical activities, when they take place inside a living organism, you call them metabolic activities. Instead of biological activities, you call them metabolic activities. So actually, now in our body, there are a lot of chemical activities taking place, right? So when you add all these chemical activities, you call them the metabolism, right? The sum of all the chemical activities taking place in an organism is what you call as metabolism. Now, metabolism includes the catabolic as well as the anabolic reactions, right? Metabolism includes the catabolic as well as the anabolic reactions. What are these catabolic reactions and what are these anabolic reactions, right? So let's go through these areas to see what these catabolic and what these anabolic reactions are. Right. So what are these catabolic reactions? Catabolic means, now from the word cata itself, it's like, breaking something into small pieces. In singular, like cata means like breaking like small pieces, right? So catabolic means breaking it into small pieces. So breaking a large molecule into small molecules, that reaction is what you call as catabolic reactions. then the anabolic reaction is actually the opposite of catabolic reactions. Anabolic reactions means actually making large molecules using smaller molecules. That is what you call as an anabolic reaction, making large molecules using anabolic reactions, right? Okay. So here you have to learn the definition of metabolism and what are the two types of metabolic activities that takes place inside our body. In unit 2, we will be learning about metabolism in detail, right? Okay. Now let's go for growth and development. Let's underline this part. All organisms begin their life as a single cell. Even when it comes to the plants, this large plant actually began with a single cell from a seed, right? Inside the seed, the zygote was formed, right? The zygote is actually a single cell, right? The zygote only developed into this very large tree. So all organisms begin their life as a single cell. During growth, highlight that word, an irreversible increase in dry mass occur, which is characterized only by the living. Right. So this irreversible increase in dry mass will be only present in living organisms, right? That means growth, that means not growth actually. Irreversible increase in dry mass will only be characterized by the living, right? So if I ask you what is growth, it is an irreversible increase in the dry mass, which is characterized only by living. That is the definition of growth, right? Then what is the definition of development? Remember, that is a SCQ point, okay? The definition of growth and developments are SCQ points. Then what is the definition of development? Development is also irreversible. They are the irreversible changes that occur during the lifespan of an organism, right? So development means irreversible changes that occur during the lifespan of an organism. Remember, growth and development are two consequent processes that happens in the lifespan of organism. Growth and development are two consequent processes that happens. That means along with growth only development takes place. There's not necessarily any difference like that. Like growth is the irreversible increase in dry mass, while all the other changes which happens to us is what you call as development, right? Like, for example, our behavioral changes are also part of our development, right? We can't call the behavioral changes as increase in dry mass, right? So they are categorized into the development area, okay? So growth and development are two consequent processes, right? So they are happening along with each other, right? Now let's move on to irritability and coordination. What is irritability? Now this is also a SCQ point. What is irritability? Irritability is the ability to respond to stimuli from both internal and external environment. If you didn't have any irritability, you won't actually respond to any stimuli, either from internal or external. You will be just like a dead person. Even if a mosquito bites you, you won't respond. Even if someone hits you, you won't respond. You won't cry, right? Because why? You don't have that ability to respond to the stimuli. Stimuli means stimuli is sort of like a feeling that you get from the external or the internal environment. So irritability is respond to stimuli. It's like a message actually. Stimuli is like a message from both internal and internal environment. Right, now highlight this one. How does the movement of organism occurs? It occurs because actually as a result of irritability and coordination, right? So actually movement, now if you want to move, first of all, you should look at the ground, right? Now if it's water, you can't walk on water, right? If it's a good path, only you can like walk properly, right? So you basically look into the ground. That means you basically get the stimuli from the outer environment. Stimuli means like the visual stimuli, you see it, right? So you get the visual stimuli and you think, okay, I can walk. And from there, the messages are sent to the legs so that you can walk, right? The messages are sent to the leg to allow muscle contraction so that you can walk. So how are the muscles sent? How are the messages sent? Through coordination, through our coordination system, right? Which we will learn in Unit 5 in the grade 13, right? So through coordination only this will happen, right? So movement of organisms occurs as a result of irritability and coordination. And in animals, actually, this happens as a result of a lot of coordinated efforts. Coordinated means sort of like combined, right? Sort of like combined efforts from the nervous system, from the hormonal system. Actually, these two systems are our coordination systems, right? Main coordinatory systems are the nervous and the hormonal system. So from the nervous system, hormonal system, muscular and skeletal system, they will ask you what are the systems involved in movement of organisms? Then you must write it's the nervous system, it's the hormonal system, it's the muscular system, and it's the skeletal system, right? Nervous system, hormonal system, muscular system, and the skeletal system, right? Now let's move into adaptation. What is adaptation? Here also, now this is a good SCQ point as well. This part is also a good SCQ point. Again, adaptation, the definition of adaptation is also a SCQ point. What is adaptation? Peculiarity. Peculiar means what? Sort of like weird, right? Not weird, but basically it's like, it means the word, it means it has the meaning of weird, right? So adaptation is the peculiarity of the structure. Peculiarity means like sort of strange, right? It's the strangeness of the structure. Now, if you take the camel have splayed out foot like this. Their foot have a high surface area, but if you take our feet, they are not splayed out like this, right? They just have some toes and they are like this, right? So, and if you take the chicks, like, the hens and all, they have different foot. They have like webbed feet, right? Webbed feet. Even if you take the ducks, they have webbed feet, right? So these structures are strange from each other, right? Different and strange, right? So adaptation is the peculiarity or the strangeness of a structure, physiology or behavior. It's not actually a structure. It could be a physiology as well. Physiology means functions, right? Some plants produces a lot of wax, right? If you touch some plants, you can see that their cuticle is very thick, right? And they reflect like you could see it like glass, not like glass, it has a really good coating. You could see a lot of wax are produced. But some plants, their leaves are very soft and fragile. Their leaves are very soft and fragile, right? So that's because of the physiology. Some plants will produce a lot of wax, while some plants will not produce a lot of wax, right? So it could either be a strangeness in the physiology or in the behavior, right? Because like, now fish could swim while birds could fly, right? That is because of their adaptation, right? So different people behave in different ways, right? That is how they have adapted to the stress conditions. Some people are living in a really fun manner, cool manner, and some people are living like crazy people, like, they do a lot of crazy things, but it's funny, right? We think, okay, they are crazy and they are really cool and all, but maybe that's how they are coping with the day-to-day stress. That's how humans have different behavior. Sometimes we can meet a very cold person, right? That person won't even smile, but inside he or she could be a really good person from inside. But the outside appearance or the behavioral patterns that we see are the things that they have adapted into their lifestyle because of the things that they have faced since they were small, right? Since they were small, they might have been like, adapted to behave in such a way to control all the stresses in their lives. And that, what do you call that? Funny, crazy person might have got adapted to cope his or her stress in that way. Now, you might have a different personality. That's how you have got adapted with the stress in your life, right? With the problems that you face in your life. So behavioral adaptations, behavioral strangeness is also an adaptation. And all these adaptation, all these strange structures, functions, and the behavioral patterns will promote our survival and reproduction in a particular habitat. What if we cannot cope with the stress, right? We will feel like we will not feel like we want to live, right? Sometimes we get depressed, right? Because when we cannot get adapted to a particular situation, we will actually lose that competition, right? We will lose that competition and we will feel depressed of ourselves, right? In that way, our survival rate would decrease, right? Especially when it comes to the native human, like the old ancient humans. Those humans actually, only the healthiest, only the strongest ones survive, right? Also the ones who got adapted to that environment only survive, right? For example, if you're a person like, oh no, I can't walk in the sand really hurts my legs and all. If you're going to stay like that, you won't ever be able to survive in an island. If you're like, I can't climb trees, what should I do? Then you won't be ever be able to get food if you're stranded in an island. But people who get stranded in an island, from those people, the ones who get adapted to those situations, the ones who practice themselves to somehow manage themselves to find some food, only survive at the end, right? So adaptation is the peculiarity of a structure, physiology, or behavior which promotes the likelihood of an organism's survival and reproduction in a particular environment. There are some examples given. Examples: sunken stomata in xerophytes, right? What are these xerophytes plants? Now, actually, the stomata are the areas in a plant where gas exchange takes place. So, what are these xerophytic plants? Xerophytic plants are the plants that are actually living in drought conditions, right? That means there are some dry environments, right? These dry environment plants, especially the plants with a lot of thorns and lot of lot of like a thick coating and everything, those plants are what you call as the xerophytes, right? They want to somehow prevent water loss, right? Because they are living in dry environments, they somehow want to reduce the water loss by transpiration. Now water loses by a process called transpiration. For now, if you don't know what transpiration is, just learn it as evaporation, right? But it's not evaporation, there is a big difference. So basically, now water will evaporate from the leaves, right? Then water will get lost from the plant, so we need to do something. Now water vapor gets lost from the plant through the stomata. But if the stomata are sunken, actually, if the stomata are sunken, many water vapor cannot be evaporated easily, because you can see when water vapor evaporate, they will create a barrier over here, right? And this will become a moist environment. So more water will not be evaporated again, because already there is a moist environment, and the humidity level in this environment has reached 100%. Humidity levels has reached 100%. So when a humidity level 100%, that area won't ever, you will learn that in physics, when humidity levels reach 100%, that level won't be able to afford any more moisture. So no more water will get evaporated. So that is why they have sunken stomata, to reduce the evaporation from the plant leaves. Viviparity in some mangroves. What do you mean by viviparity? Viviparity means actually, now when attached to the plant itself, now if you take this mangrove, where this seedling actually germinates when attached to the plant. So it gets all the nutrients from the plant. While attached to the plant only, can you see all these roots, big roots in the mangroves? That's because those plants are actually connected to the other plants as well. The young plant is connected to the mother plant and gets the nourishment from the mother plant. That's another adaptation. So viviparity in some mangroves is an adaptation. Splayed out foot in camels. Now this is the splayed out foot in camels. Can you see their foot? They have a large surface area, so they wouldn't sink into the sand. Now what if you wear a high heel and if you go into the sand, you will definitely sink, right? You will definitely sink. But this actually creates a good a good support for the sand and helps them to stand for a long time, right? Helps them to stand for a long time in the sand and also walk in the sand, right? Walk in the sand, right? So that is all about adaptation. You have to learn the 3 examples that they have given under adaptation. Now let's move into reproduction. What is reproduction? For now, you will have to, there are 2 definitions of reproduction. One comes in the Unit 1 book and the other comes in the Unit 5 area in the grade 13 book. So even if you write this now, actually it depends on the area where the question comes. If the question comes in a unit, the SCQ1 part, then you can write this definition. If it comes in the SCQ third SCQ, then you should write the other reproduction. But anyways, they would give marks for both the answers as well sometimes, right? Most of the time our teachers have told us they would give the mark for any of the answer which includes the same word. Like there could be two definitions in the resource book, but if it's like the if they have mentioned as a definition in the resource book, you could write either one of them and you'll get that mark, right? Okay, heredity and evolution is the next thing. Now we are talking about how actually the characters are being transferred from one generation to another in this part. Right. Organisms have genes that pass from one generation to the next. Right. If you take an organism, it has genes, it passes from one generation to the next. And you can see now it actually happens by cell division actually. When nuclear division takes place and then cell division takes place, and then only the information stored in nucleus pass into the next generation, right? So when the information stored in the nucleus, inside the nucleus only you find the genes. When this information pass from one cell to the other cell, these genes are the ones which actually control the physiological, morphological and behavioral characters of organisms. What do you mean by physiological? Physiological means functional. What do you mean by morphological? If you don't know, write them down. Morphological means structural. Morphological means structural. Behavioral means behavioral, right? So what are these? So here you don't have to study anything. You just have to, know that part, right? Organisms have genes passed from one generation to the other generation. What do the genes control? They control physiological, morphological, and behavioral characters of organisms, right? Then comes the important part. What is evolution? Again, evolution, we are learning under two parts here in Unit 1 as well as in Unit 3. But I think this definition is the easy definition to remember rather than the one in the Unit 3, right? So ability of organisms to change over time as a result of genetic modification is what you call as evolution. That means the ability that the organisms have to change over time. That means, now let's see, this is the grandfather, this is the father, this is the child, right? I'm not talking about humans, right? Let's say this is a different plant species, a tree species. Now there will be some changes when it comes from father to child. There will be some changes when it comes from grandfather to let's say it's like this. Now this grandfather has five fingers in the hand. Then let's say it has humans, but this is not a what you call practical example. I'm just trying to explain how evolution takes place. In all the grandfathers in our world, they have five fingers in their hand. But when it comes to the next generation, suddenly the genes get changed, right? The genes get changed due to a mutation suddenly, maybe sometimes due to a chemical that we are getting exposed to. Suddenly a mutation occurs in our cells, in our genes. Suddenly, when that mutation occurs, the next generation fathers would have only 4 fingers. And then again, another mutation happens to all the fathers in that particular in our world, in that particular time. And then again, what happens is most of the children will get around like 3 fingers. Likewise, evolution happens over time as a result of genetic modification, when genes are modified due to mutations, right? Okay, so that is it about all the characteristics. Here we are learning about something special that you have to remember. Now remember, if all these 7 characteristics are shown by one, that means all living organisms show all these 7 characteristics, right? But sometimes there are non-living things which just shows 1 or 2 of these characteristics. Let's see who those non-living entities are. Right. Many non-living entities may have 1 or more of these characteristics, but not all of them, because all are possessed, all of these characteristics are possessed only by living organisms. Let's see who those non-living entities are. Now, growth we see in all the organisms, but non-living entities like crystals also grow. Now, just because they grow, should we call them living? No, they should have all these structure, all these characteristics to call them living. But they just grow only, right? So we can't call them living. And also we know waves move, right? Waves, like the waves in the sea, they move, right? So just because they move, can we call them as living? No, we can't, right? They should have all the other 6 characteristics as well, right? But only living organisms display all these characteristics simultaneously or sometimes at some point during their life cycle, right? By considering this, that it can be said that these are occurring in single-celled organisms as well as highly complex organisms such as humans and anthophytes. Anthophytes means flowering plants. Now don't get scared of these big words. We are learning about all these big words in Unit 3. Phylum Anthophyta means flowering plants. Anthophytes means flowering plants, right? Don't get scared. Now we are coming to the final part, which is the hierarchical levels. Hierarchical levels of organization of living things. So one thing that you have to highlight over here is the cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life, right? The cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. We are learning this under what? Under the cell theory in Unit 2 as well. Under the cell theory in Unit 2 also we are learning this. Some organisms are unicellular while others are multicellular. We know that. Cell is composed of several organelles. Yes, if you take the cell, some cells will have a nucleus, some cells might not have a nucleus, some cells have mitochondria, like eukaryotic cells have mitochondria, nucleus, chloroplast, endoplasmic reticulum. Prokaryotic cells will have ribosomes, just DNA molecules, right? So cell is composed of several organelles which are formed by different organic molecules, right? The hierarchical levels of organization of living things can be constructed using relevant examples. Let's see. This is the hierarchy of the living things in our planet Earth. Right. Okay. The first one is starting from the smallest, which are the molecules, right? Molecules. Could be oxygen, could be carbon, could be hydrogen. These combine and form the organelles, right? Organelles like what? Could be the subcellular components as well. They just have said the organelles. You know the difference between subcellular components and organelles, right? Subcellular components are the ones without, and organelles are the subcellular components with membranes, right? So organelles, and then organelles form cells, and a group of cells forms tissues, right? And then a group of tissues forms the organ, and then several organs combines and form the organ system, and then organ systems combine form the organisms. Many organisms combine form the what? Form the populations of organisms or populations of individuals, right? And these populations are of just one species. When several species combine, what do you call it? Communities, right? This is just deers. Deers, population is deer. But if you take the deers, tigers, the cows and everything, then that is a community. And if you take the ecosystem includes the non-living structures as well, like what? Like the trees, sorry, not the trees, yeah, like the wind, like the air, right? Rocks, soil, ecosystems, and biosphere. Finally, it forms the whole structure, that means the whole world, which includes the living things as well as the non-living things, right? So that is the end of the Unit 1 part, right? So it was a quick discussion. I think we started around like 9:10. and it went till 11:22, 10:11 to around like 2 hours. Now we have to go for past papers, right? Let's move on to the past paper questions that I have selected for you. I have selected the 5 years of past, sorry, from the 5 years, I have selected the 3 years where they have asked the unit one area. The other two past papers have not asked MCQs from the other two. These are the parts where they have asked from the unit one area. And I have also taken a question that I did during my times. A question that I did during my times. Let's see that question as well. Right. Now let's go through this question. The first organisms found on Earth are considered to be what? Are they heterotrophic anaerobic? Are they heterotrophic aerobic prokaryotes? Are they autotrophic anaerobic eukaryotes? Are they heterotrophic anaerobic prokaryotes or autotrophic aerobic prokaryotes? I need your answer. I will give you 1 minute for this question. This is an easy question. Write down 2020 and put question number 1 and write down the answer for this part and send me the answer as well. Okay, answer 4. What about, okay, I don't know. What about the other student? Yes, 4. Let's see. Right, 4th, heterotrophic anaerobic prokaryotes. Very good. Both the students, very good. They found the answer, right? So see, 1 mark from that particular MCQ here. Now let's go to the other one. 2023, that means our year. 2 characteristics that can be seen only in living organisms are what? Is it adaptation and growth? Is it movement and irritability? Is it change with time and development? Is it metabolism and heredity? Is it synthesis and decomposition? I will give you 2 minutes. You can carefully think about that question and answer me. See, the question they are asking is which can be seen only in living organisms. That means what are the here they might have included some things which are present in non-living things as well. That's why they have asked us to choose what are the things which are present only in living organisms. Take your time, because if I answer this question, it would be in vain. Since this is a very fresh paper, try to answer it. Doesn't matter. Take your time and try to answer the question, right? Right. One answer is there. Let me check. Fourth one. What about the other student? What is the answer? Is it the fourth answer? I'll again show the question. Okay, shall I do one? Ah, yeah, one. Okay. So Alpha send me one and Mersa, right? I think I'm pronouncing the names correctly. Apologize me if the pronunciation is wrong. Mirza 4 and Alpha, sorry, Alpha 4 and Mirza 1. Okay, let me go through the answers. Right, okay. Two characteristics that can be seen only in living organisms. Now, let's go through the first answer, adaptation and growth. So, adaptation you can see only in living organisms, right? Adaptations, only living things adapt. Can you see a table adapting to something? Can you see a wave adapting to anything? No. But growth, you know, crystals grow, right? Crystals grow. So that is present in non-living things. So you can eliminate that answer because they are asking what are the characteristics only seen in living organisms. Now go for the second one. If you take movement, you can see animals move, plants move, but also you can see waves move, right? Waves move. So can you take that as the answer? No, you can't, right? You can't take that as the answer because non-living things also move. And irritability, of course, you can take that, but since it's with movement over here, second one will be eliminated. Changes with time and development. Here they haven't given any specific thing also, so keep it and go. This doesn't seem as a correct answer. Go for the fourth one. Metabolism. Metabolism takes place only in living organisms, right? So that is correct. And heredity is involved with genes. Genes are present in living organisms. So that also sounds correct. So that you can take as a correct answer. Fifth one, synthesis and decomposition. Right? Even I think we can synthesize non-living, like when it comes to non-living things can also produce stuff, right? Non-living things can also produce stuff. And when it comes to decomposition, even non-living things decompose. If you take a paper will decompose even after taking years, right? So you can't say it is present only in living things. Then that can also be eliminated. From third and the fourth one, the most appropriate answer. See, they are asking us to select the most appropriate answer, right? So in that case, answer will be the fourth answer. Answer for that question is the fourth answer. Now look at this question. This is one of the papers that I have done. One of the characteristic features of non-living beings, which is also shown by living. Non-living beings, which is also shown by living. That means one of the characteristic feature, which is features of non-living beings, which is shown by living. I will tell you the answer for that. That is actually growth and movement, right? Growth and movement are the answers for that, right? They are shown by non-living things as well as living beings, right? Now let's go through the structured essay questions. Let's quickly go through the structured essay questions as well. Right. In the 2019 structured essay, they haven't asked anything. Let's move for the 2020 structured essay. Yes, they have asked. Let's quickly go through this structured essay. Try to send me the answer. It doesn't matter even if you look at the book now. One of the characteristic features of living organisms is irritability. What is known as irritability? What is irritability? Does someone know the answer for irritability? The definition that they are asking. If you want, in your resource book, write down 2022 MCQ next to irritability. Then you know if all the definitions have been asked, what are the remaining definitions they could ask from the 2025 people and the 2026 people, right? Then you can put more emphasis when you're studying those areas. That's what I did. So you can also do the same. I think that is an easy question. So I will look into the answer. Yes, ability to respond to stimuli. That's you must say ability to respond to stimuli from internal and from both internal and external environment. You need to write the full answer, right? Don't just say ability to but that's good. Ability to respond to stimuli from both internal and external environment, right? Put 2020 in your writing book and write down that answer. Okay, now let's move into the 2021 question. No, yeah, 2021 part. Right, 2021, I think. Yeah, about how many years ago did life originate on Earth? Answer for the first one as well as, yeah, first tell me the answer for the first one. Even I'm not going to check the answer. I will let you know. Life on Earth formed around 3.5 billion years ago, right? 3.5 billion years ago. Metabolism, growth, and development are some characteristics of organisms. What is meant by each of them? Metabolism, write down 2021 and write down the answers. Metabolism means sum of all the chemical reactions that takes place inside an organism, right? Write down the exact wordings in your resource book. I'm saying it from my own memory. Growth means what? Growth means irreversible increase in dry mass. Irreversible increase in dry mass of an organism which is characterized only by the living. Which is characterized only by the living. And what is development? Irreversible changes that occur during the lifespan of the organism. Irreversible changes that occur during the lifespan of the organism. Third one, state the three main methods by which food production can be sustainably maintained. What are the three main methods? That is production of high-yielding varieties of plants and animals, production of disease-resistant plants and animals, improvement of post-harvest technological methods, right? Now, you won't believe me. I'm not looking at any book. I don't even have the marking scheme near me, right? I'm just saying it by my memory. So you should also come to that level. That means now this week, if you all are 2026 students, try to study this part, right? 2025 students, don't spend much time on this area. But anyways, make sure you're thorough with this part by taking one day. That means not the whole day, taking around like 30 minutes from one day or 45 minutes. Make sure you're thorough with this part, right? 2026 students can linger on this part for the whole week as well. It doesn't matter for the 2026. What mainly contributes for overuse of natural resources? Increase in the human population, right? You have to make sure that you write increase in the human population, right? Then let's go for the 2020 MCQ, 2022 MCQ. I think in 2022 MCQs, they haven't asked anything. So let's see the 2023 MCQ, which is the final MCQ for the day. Oh, sorry, not the MCQ, the structured for the day. No question, right? No question from the 2023 as well, right? So I think we can finish the session for today. Yes, we can. Yeah, very good. 3.5 billion years ago, both students very good. And I'm glad around like 4 or 5 students joined, right? We had 6 participants in the beginning, but only 2 are remaining. The 2 who first joined the sessions are remaining, and I'm proud of that. So you should be happy of yourself and proud of yourself that you were able to stay until the end of a session. And that is a really good thing. Plus, try to complete these things, right? Your homework for this week on Unit 1 would be, now this is a webinar that I did for the 2026 students, right? So those students should actually do this homework for the week. They must read this part again. Plus, they should try to write the essays on issues pertaining to biology, right? They must write the essays on issues pertaining to biology, because sometimes, even though that is a rare essay, that could come as if that comes as an essay, then you all are well practiced for that essay from the beginning itself, right? Plus, study all the structured essay points that I have given you as well, right? All the areas where I have told you to study the structured essay questions, study those areas. I think I've been a little bit fast today. I'm trying to reduce my speed because for some students, they want to go in a slow manner, and I've been requested to reduce my speed from in the official class itself. I will try my best to reduce my speed and go with their request, right? So thank you for joining the session, and good luck with your week's work, right? Good night. Thank you. You're welcome. Good night.